Hello everyone and welcome, my name's Ali. Today I have the classic Xbox 360 controller and I'm going to be comparing it with the brand new Xbox One controller. Note this is a day one edition of the Xbox One controller. Doesn't make any differences in terms of its physical build, it just looks slightly different. And I've also got a full unboxing of the Xbox One here on my channel already, so make sure you're checking that out, and also Xbox One gameplay for you guys. I've also done a comparison with the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 3 controller, so make sure you're checking that out. And very soon on my channel there'll be an Xbox One controller comparison with the PlayStation 4 controller, just so you can directly compare the two new controllers for the two new consoles. So within this video I'm going to be going over physical differences, actual design differences, and how it will be affected when you're actually holding and using this new Xbox One controller. I'm sure a lot of you guys have used this 360 controller. It was generally considered the better controller of the two for the last generation, for the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3, but of course that's completely up to you guys. It's personal preference, and that's why I'm running over everything for you guys so you can sort of get a look at everything that's changed. So starting off with physical appearance, if we have a look at either side of these controllers here and compare just the size of the actual controllers, we can see that the Xbox One controller is a tad longer, not by much. You can see that the edge or the end here of the 360 controllers a little bit more rounded, and the Xbox One version's now a little bit flat. So it sort of sits in your hands rather than sort of gripping the controller too much. I'm going to go on to the actual bumper sticks and the analog sticks as well in a minute, but if we have a look on the actual backs of the controllers and compare them side by side, we can see that the general design is similar. However, you'll notice on the back, there's no longer the massive battery pack that was there for the 360 version. The batteries are now stored comfortably within this little compartment here, and the batteries aren't actually needed for the Xbox One controller as well, which is very important. Now, with the 360 version, we had the connector here, which allowed you to hook up to various devices. However, with the Xbox One version, we now just have a micro USB port, and what you can do is directly plug this into your Xbox One without any batteries and just use it as a standard wired controller, which means batteries aren't always needed, which is very useful. And as I said, it's now compactly stored within the controller itself, so it doesn't stick out like the massive battery pack that the Xbox 360 version had. If we then turn over to the front, we can see that the general layout for the buttons, etc., are almost identical. We have got here an improved D-pad, where you've actually got this four-pronged D-pad rather than just a one piece that you press around like this. So definitely an improved D-pad. And this is actually sort of edged into the controller. So the D-pad has sort of got its own little hole here within the controller, which is nice. We've got the standard power button or the Xbox home button a little bit higher on the Xbox One version, and we no longer have a start and select button on the 360 version. We now have the two new buttons here. I believe one of them's menu, and the other button will bring up different options as well. I'm not sure on their specifics, but when you're using them within game, different options will appear on screen, so you know exactly which button to press. Essentially just a new design version of the start and select button. Now, if we go on to the triggers actually and have a look at that, because the triggers are definitely different. So we can see on the Xbox 360 version that the trigger simply got pressed down. There wasn't too much in terms of shape. It was fairly flat. However, if we have a look at the new Xbox One triggers, we can see that they are a little bit more edged, which means your fingers aren't as likely to slip off when you're actually holding it like this and pressing down. So one of the big new features that the actual Xbox One controller triggers have that the Xbox 360 version definitely didn't is actually a little rumble feature within the actual triggers themselves. So when you're playing certain video games like racing games, if you start going off course and you're starting to run on the grass on the right hand side using the right wheels of your car, essentially rumble will go off in the right trigger as you're holding down this, so you know that you're going off on the right hand side. And similarly for the left hand side, this can be implemented in lots of different ways for lots of different games. For example, if you're getting shot at from the right side and you're holding down the right trigger, this will start rumbling. And it's also done just generally to basically improve the sort of whole experience, make you feel more immersed, because you're going to have your fingers generally on these buttons with your two fingers most of the time. Just additional feedback, which is pretty cool for the new Xbox One controller. Generally, I like the feel of these new paddles. It feels very good compared to the old Xbox 360 version. There was definitely a lot of friction when you press down on these paddles. It felt like you're pushing a paddle. There was a little less friction when you're pressing down on the Xbox One paddles, but it feels nice. Now, some of the changes which people aren't liking too much is the actual buttons here, the buttons right at the top of the Xbox One controller. Now on the Xbox 360 controller, if you press those buttons, you could pretty much press it anywhere on the button. You press it on the top here, you press it on the edge, it was always going to press down regardless. However, on the Xbox One version, if you try and press the button on the edge here, it just doesn't press down. And I believe this is because it's actually a hinged button, which is hinged around this point here, which means if you're pressing directly down, nothing's going to happen. So you have to press the buttons right, either in the middle or on the edge for it to actually register as a button, which can be a little bit annoying if people wrap their fingers all the way around. I don't notice it in all honesty. It's just a little thing that I thought was worth noting to you guys. Now, next up here is the actual analog sticks. Now, these have definitely changed a lot. So with the Xbox 360 version, the analog sticks were actually, in terms of friction, in terms of movement, quite stiff. They were definitely stiffer than the PlayStation 3 version, which meant you had a little bit of friction and some sort of resistance when you were moving around on the analog sticks. The analog sticks were indented, which meant you could place your fingers inside them. And although that's a similar case for the design of the Xbox One thumbsticks, your thumbs can go inside the controllers. The actual size of the controller head is actually a little bit smaller now, and there's a lot less friction. The thumbsticks are a lot freer to move. I would compare the resistance similar to a PlayStation 3 controller, which means you're moving around a lot quicker. I think it's going to take a little bit of getting used to for some people. One of the very nice changes is actually on the edge of the thumbstick is this gripped like surface, which means if you do press your thumb against the edge, you can actually keep it there with not much, you won't slip off essentially because of this textured design around the edge. I really like the new design of these thumbsticks. It personally fit my thumbs a lot better, and I have quite big hands anyway. So I think the thumbsticks have definitely been improved. But again, you really have to try this out for yourself. It's hard to explain how a controller will work until you're actually using it within game yourself. So definitely some differences between the new analog sticks there. And then finally, we have the new A, B, X, and Y button. Microsoft go on about how I think this is a 3-tiered design system. So you've got the bottom of the button, you then got the actual colored letter, and then you've got the top plastic surface. So it's been designed in a nice way to make it look as nice as possible. At the end of the day, these are just the same buttons being in almost an identical position as well. They get pressed down in the same way, and they feel just as nice as well. I guess the final thing to have a look at is simply the headset device. So on the Xbox 360 version, we had the connector right there. On the Xbox One version, we have the connector right there. And if you have a look at my unboxing video for the Xbox One, you'll see the actual connector that goes inside. So I believe that is pretty much everything. It feels nice to grip. I really like it. Essentially, if you're used to the Xbox 360 version, the Xbox One version isn't too much of a difference. You really have to get hands-on with yourself to really feel it and perhaps make a decision. If you go into any local game stores and may have an Xbox One set up already for you guys and you can just get hands-on with it, give it a go. But hopefully this video has given you a good overview in terms of the general changes. We've got a generally improved D-pad, slightly different buttons in terms of the triggers, slightly different shape in terms of the grip on the edge, definitely new analog sticks, and then the buttons here are pretty much the same thing. So hopefully you guys have enjoyed this. Give it a thumbs up if you had. Make sure you're checking out my Xbox One controller comparison versus the PlayStation 4. That should be up on my channel as well. So thank you very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on my next video.